One Malaysian podcast and a Singapore radio show later. Here he is.
Appetizer before the main course.
Oh, yeah. Correct.
Oh, nice, nice.
Sometimes making a decision which is quite heart-aching, like the one to not contest in Marine Parade and shift resources elsewhere. Chee Soon Juan abandoning Bukit Batok. The man didn't abandon it. You redrew the boundaries.
Yeah.
When you throw about statistics like the largest number of child amputees on a per capita basis anywhere in the world is found in Gaza. If that doesn't move your heartstrings, I think you probably are some AI model or something like, Politics must be, it cannot be this thing which we are scared of, that we recoil from because, if I say this, somebody is going to say that. Politics must be about respect, mutual respect.
If you love this podcast, chances are you value real conversation. The kind that's honest, emotional, and stays with you. Now imagine a conversation like that about someone you love. That's what we do with our audio service called Folklory. We hop on a 30-minute call with you or someone you choose and turn that conversation into a beautifully crafted, personalized podcast for your loved one. A gift that shows them how much they mean to you and how much you appreciate them, which they can listen to forever. And we guarantee that it'll be one of the most meaningful things you have ever given them. Because we'll use everything we've learned from interviewing more than 1,000 people across 20 countries over the past 5 years, including the Prime Minister of Singapore. And if you want to make it extra special, add on our limited edition Folklory speaker, styled as an old school cassette tape, so they can play their story anytime, anywhere. All the details are on folklory.com or reach out to us on WhatsApp at the link in the show notes. So hope you can check it out because we'd love to help you create something unforgettable. And now, on to the podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of 𝗖𝗲, your thrice weekly podcast where we talk about the hottest news with a touch of what, Terence?
Good old humor.
Good old humor, man.
Yep.
So this is, I guess, one of the most anticipated episodes.
Yeah, to fill the gaping hole in our hearts.
Correct. The one that we've been feeling for a while. But finally, the wound is going to be sealed because we have in front of us the leader of the opposition, Mr. Pritam Singh. Welcome to 𝗖𝗲, Pritam.
Thank you for welcoming me to your studio. I promised you I would appear after the elections, and here I am.
Yeah.
One Malaysian podcast and a Singapore radio show later. Here he is.
Appetizer before the main course.
Correct. Nice skills. But do you remember that moment in particular where we caught you on camera? During the election?
Do. It was in Serangoon Gardens, right? That little roundabout. You guys were...
Yeah, we were recording a podcast.
Who was with you at that time?
No one. So we were doing the daily, just Terence and I, commentary.
Right.
So there was no guest, unless they crashed our podcast or they were caught in the background.
Right. No, and that's when I told you I will come after the elections.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah, here you are. Thanks for coming. How's life at this point?
Waiting for Parliament to open. It opens quite soon, actually. 5th of September in the evening. President Tharman conventionally starts with the President's address. And then there's also another series of documents which are part of the address, but usually the President doesn't recite them. And they are the annexes to each ministry. So you will have an idea of the strategic thrust of the government for this term of Parliament. So that's actually a very important marker for the new term because it sets the stage. And in the times that we are in, obviously there'll be a lot of interest in what is on the government's mind.
But does it mean that this period is like a lull period for
pre-season?
Pre-season kind of thing.
Well, Parliament hasn't opened, so you can say that. But obviously, the MPs, we are taking notes of all the things that have happened over the last couple of months. And there will be parliamentary questions that will be filed, but you can only file them when Parliament opens.
Yeah.
So we've just been storing up our parliamentary questions. I mean, there have been a number of important issues, right? I mean, you talk about locally teachers, recruitment of more teachers, shortening of their training. You've got that episode with, what is that?
The bullies.
The bullies. You've got that counter-espionage thing, the UNSC, what is the name of that? 𝗓𝗔 4-digit number. I mean, there are some important things that have happened, and obviously there will be some questions from the Workers' Party members of Parliament to the government about them. consistent with our role as not just our role, but the role of the opposition to scrutinize government policy and actions.
But have you, I'm guessing you have had time to, reanalyze GE 2025, because I'm guessing, after that ended, work began, as you said. But just, if we could just look back at the GE 2025 and then come to like how it influences your approach now. Like, after having time to, reevaluate, like how are you looking back at GE 2025?
Well, in a certain sense, from the parliamentary standpoint, we've got 2 additional MPs. They are NC MPs. So in the main, it's still the Aljunied team, the Sengkang team, and the representative for Hougang Danestan. That hasn't changed from the previous term of parliament. Yes, there are new personalities we've got, including the NC MPs, a number of new MPs. So there'll be some space for them to understand how parliament works, the tone, the decorum, and what it feels like actually to be in parliament, and to understand that it's a serious platform. And that will take a bit of time. So you've got to let that process, continue naturally. But in terms of the way we're going for the elections, I beg your pardon, Parliament going forward, a lot of it will have to do with what the government puts out on the 5th of September. And our response really will be shaped around that. We have an indication of what our views and philosophies are, and we share this with all Singaporeans before we enter the election proper, and that's the manifesto. And so, for example, in this year's manifesto for GE 2025, we had the first chapter covering some of the points that we had raised in Parliament and that were eventually taken up by the government in some shape or form, if not directly. So we will continue with the manifesto as the backbone of our approach to Parliament. But obviously it will evolve along the way. Issues will come up. I also know that there are concerns about job-related issues, concerns about employability of Singaporeans, whether we are getting the jobs that we should be getting. Those things inevitably are always important. I mean, the bread and butter issues generally are what keeps Parliament humming. And that's just par for the course, really. And it's about us continuing to ensure that we play that role of a loyal opposition, of not just scrutinizing government policy, but also suggesting alternatives at the appropriate times.
But like you mentioned that the manifesto came about before the election. And the election, you all explored different GRCs, and in the end didn't make the cut. Even though I know par for par in the areas you contested, you got more votes than the PAP. Or am I?
No, not more votes. I mean, I think overall if you look at all the GRCs put together, but I think but that of course is a bit of a skewed statistic, right? Because if you look at Aljunied hitting close to 60%, that sort of makes up for another place where we didn't win. So yes, I've heard that people roll that out. GRC for GRC or slightly above 50%. But I think we need to put that in context.
But the bigger thing I was getting at is that manifesto came before the election. The 2 GRCs you contested outside of Aljunied, you all lost. Doesn't that impact, how did that impact your approach going forward? Because at the end of the day, the manifesto, if it's supposed to be what people really care about in those GRCs,
I see what you're saying. I think. So if you look at any GRC or SMC in Singapore and you throw the manifestos of not just the Workers' Party, but the other parties, and you ask them, so do you know what's in the manifesto and what they are going for? I'm not sure you're going to get a very consistent reply across the board. So it's more than the manifesto. But to suggest that after the elections, after having not succeeded in some GRCs, it's a reminder of where the opposition is as a whole, number one. Of course, it's self-reflection about could you have done something better? What other manifesto point could you have introduced to tip the scale, if you know what I mean? But I don't think the manifesto would have been the driving force to tip that scale, to be honest. I think it gives you a general idea of what the Workers' Party is about. And I always encourage people, even today, to just go to our website and read the manifesto. So you get a sense of what the Workers' Party advocates for. And that's a living document. So sometimes with the passage of time, you have to adjust it.
Yeah.
Because the points that you're making have been overtaken by events.
Yeah.
Or the public mood has shifted, or there is an assessment that we need to evolve the point. So, but at any point in time, it's a helpful document to understand what the party stands for.
So moving from, I'm talking about a place like Marine Parade, right?
Yes.
Where there was that
Oh,
chatter
yes.
about Marine Parade residents being abandoned and all. What's the ground strategy now going forward, knowing the last election wasn't contested, and what's next for Marine Parade?
So I'm not trying to be skittish here, but I don't usually talk about strategy publicly.
Okay.
But generally, I would say the Workers' Party are here to stay. And what we do is we make an assessment of the political landscape every time the 𝗬𝗲 produces its report. And then things have to shift. Because when the 𝗬𝗲 puts out its report, in my view, they're also putting out a report for the future. You've got to think about development, where new BTOs are going to be built, where new residents are going to come in. There are a number of things that you have to think about going forward. And of course, when there's a new BTO development, generally a lot more younger Singaporeans, and the views can be different because it's a very diverse society now. Older Singaporeans may have a certain perspective. Those in their 40s and 50s may have a certain perspective. They are more interested in issues with regard to what happens if I suddenly lose my job at 40, 45 and I can't get a job with a similar salary. And then I've got trouble servicing my mortgage and things like that. So, and then you've got young Singaporeans. And so each one has a different there's a different sense of what they want out of the political system. And so all these factors come in to determine what we would colloquially refer to as strategy. We don't have all the information, obviously. We don't have access to the resources of, for example, the People's Association, who know actually very intimately, even down to the number of people of a particular race in an area. We don't have that information, and we have to try and make the best of what we have. And that will mean sometimes making a decision which is quite heart-aching, like the one to not contest in Marine Parade and shift resources elsewhere. Difficult because I know the ground teams in the Workers' Party worked very hard in Marine Parade for 5 years since the last elections. And it's a credit to them, a testimony to their resilience and to their commitment to having a more balanced political system. But sometimes strategy determines that you go somewhere else. And kudos to them. They just took it on their chin and got on with the job.
I mean, you also did mention, like, right after the election that you're very proud of how the party reacted to the 𝗬𝗲 changes and all that, right?
Yes.
And that is contrast with what other opposition parties are saying about 𝗬𝗲. I felt it was much more, you felt it was just something you kind of got to roll with the punches as well. But going forward, like in the next 5 years, is there going to be a lot more that you want to talk about the 𝗬𝗲 in Parliament as well?
Again, as to what we intend to do in Parliament, I probably want to be a bit more circumspect about it on this platform, because obviously I'll have to consult with my team members, and we work best when we've got consensus and a strong consensus. But I mean, the 𝗬𝗲, there are no new arguments anymore. I think it's the same old arguments, right? Report tends to be super thin. I mean, the depth of the discussion that is held by the committee is, in my view, not reflected in the report. I mean, I can't believe that it's just a case of, we're going to shift some here, shift some there, because population has shifted. And, let's get on with it. So there's a lot of deep interest in how these things are done. And it was quite actually heartwarming for me to see a lot of younger people take a deep interest in, how this thing is executed. Because it always, it favors the incumbent. This is not a complaint on my part, because that's the reality. That's the real world we live in. The incumbent will do as much as it can within the boundaries of the law to ensure that it stays in power. And this is a reality we have to confront. You can either sit down and keep moping about it, or you get on with the job. But at every intersection, every now and then, it's important to remind a younger generation of Singaporeans that we can be better. And we can do better. And we can have a more, not so much interactive, but a more open process and a more accountable process of how boundaries are redrawn. Because that's the first stage of political participation. You got to decide where you're going and what is in that constituency that you're trying to go for. No, which is why I think, Terence, you mentioned the word abandonment. Actually, I thought it was used in the most horrific sense, not so much in regard to the Workers' Party deciding not to stand in Marine Parade, but of Chee Soon Juan abandoning Bukit Batok. The man didn't abandon it. You redrew the boundaries. So, I think a lot of us, we hear this language, and when very smart, intelligent people say these sort of things, and you sort of stop and wonder, seriously, is this what it's about? I think you really need to look at your own shop.
With incidents like that, and you've been through many elections, many pivotal elections, but how did GE 2025 change you? And maybe not so much from a party level, or even from a party level, because, for example, pre-GE 2025, we have tried to get you on the podcast.
Yes.
But couldn't.
Right.
Post-GE 2025, you came on. And you've
okay, I get it.
Yeah. Is there something that maybe, be it the new media format or for your evolution as a leader, how did GE 2025 specifically change
That's
you?
an excellent question. And I think the examples actually hit the nail on the spot, really. Pre-GE 2025, so by virtue of being the LO, for example, when I file a parliamentary question and the office holder replies, and I have a follow-up question, or what they call a supplementary question, I raise my hand, and the convention in Parliament today with the Speaker has been, if the LO has put up his hand, he will get first dibs. So in that sense, I have a profile. I have an opportunity for people to understand where I'm coming from, and I have airtime, if I can put it that way. But my colleagues don't have that same luxury. They have to compete with the other PAP MPs who also want to ask SQs. And the Speaker has a tough job of trying to stack up, the MPs and stack them up fairly. So I felt that it was more important for them to be given airtime in other places so that the public is more familiar with them. That was my thinking. So now that elections have passed, and it has occurred to me that it may be helpful to go out there every once in a while to share my views and thoughts on certain issues. So, for example, before 𝗪𝗧 𝗪𝗶, I was in discussions with 𝘲𝗫92. To appear on their show, which also happened quite fortuitously because my COE was going to expire, and I went to a car show, and lo and behold, I meet Glenn Ong there. And Glenn Ong being Glenn Ong, he says, "Hey, when are you going to come on my show?" And all that. And I said, "Okay, let's look at this line." He drops me an email shortly thereafter, and then arrangements are made. I know you guys must want to talk about 𝗪𝗧 𝗪𝗶, so I'll let you do it at your own time, but we can reach that point. But so then going on podcasts and coming on podcasts like this was just a continuum of that view, that, okay, we can step out there a little bit. But it's not going to be so regular because I'm sure you'll get sick and tired of me after a while. But every now and then, I think it's helpful to step out and also to accept that, there's an evolution sometimes of the information landscape. And obviously podcasts are, the format is something which is interesting, and it's less scripted, and the back and forth is we talk about general topics, but when you get into the discussion, you speak openly. It's a conversation. So it's a format I think I can't ignore.
But aren't you, is it at the back of your mind that this will be heavily scrutinized? Because we have seen it happen to people who come on. How do you navigate that?
No, this is, I think, again, one of the reasons why traditionally one has to be careful in the political arena in Singapore, because we've seen individuals who've said certain things, which in the normal course of conversation would just seem, harmless, but they may strike a raw nerve somewhere.
Yeah.
And for many of such people, this is part of the rough and tumble of politics. You just move on. But in our society, we have had a history where the reaction can be very strong. And the reasons of the reaction, we will only see the superficial replies, but the true reasons why they react that way, or some of the powers that be react that way, you will never know. So you have to accept that one has to be careful. I mean, I explain it like this. I usually tell anyone in politics, there are tripwires, and you just have to be careful of them. But you can also be so careful that you don't step out at all and you don't have anything to share, anything to say. And that makes politics very impossible, actually, if you're not engaging the issue. So you have to be mindful of the legal landscape, if I can put it that way. There will be scrutiny, but at some point then you ask yourself, look, fundamentally, who are you as a person? Are you in this to run down someone, criticize someone in an unfair way? Because that is who you are. And that's not who I am. So I've always had a view that participation is such a fundamental aspect of civic citizenship. Participating in civic life is important, and politics is just part of this. Of course, if you're in the business of getting personal with people, chances are you're going to get into trouble, because I think that's just the way the cosmos works, And at the same time, of course, if you're that sort of individual who plays racial politics, for example, and knowing that there could be an innuendo which is interpreted differently, or if you're a chauvinist, that's probably the sort of person who would get into trouble. And more than that, maybe perhaps just being an opposition member is going to put you on more scrutiny anyway. But that's the nature of the political landscape in Singapore. So I would not be surprised, and I would count myself as one of these individuals who would be mindful about these things. Because at the end of the day, you want the opposition cause to continue and you want it to thrive. And I've believed that it's important to have a strong opposition in Singapore. And that creates a more balanced society, a more balanced system. People feel that their views are represented in Parliament by individuals who don't share the government's view. And that's perfectly normal and all right. I mean, you can have a robust debate in Parliament. You can have a robust political system, which is also stable. And that has been the approach that the Workers' Party has broadly tried to take to the best of its ability for many years. And even my predecessor actually built the foundation for that sort of approach, Mr. 𝗏𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗏. So obviously, and his words to me, I'll never forget, he says, Pritam, you have to be your own man. You are who you are. And I think as long as, you do your best and you remember that Singaporeans don't want the Workers' Party to fail, and we are better off as a system and as a country with a strong opposition in Parliament, then just venture forth, go ahead, And it's, in life, if you're going to be looking over your shoulder all the time, you're going to have a very difficult time moving forward, I think.
I'm curious how many articles will come out.
Let's see. Let's open.
But speaking of tripwires, one of the most debated segments from that podcast was, why doesn't Pritam Singh want to be Prime Minister?
Oh, God.
We talk about people don't want WP to fail, but we want you to lead, right? I think even Professor 𝗏𝗏, when he came on, I was in agreement with him. I want to see a lead, Pritam Singh who says, I want to lead Singapore. And why? Could you explain why you don't want to be Prime Minister?
Well, I think it's more a case of how the political system is evolving, right? I mean, you can't crawl and then straight away become Usain Bolt. One day you're crawling, tomorrow you're Usain Bolt. It doesn't happen that way. So our system also evolves that way, in my view. And I think because the political system is still fledgling, if you consider the presence of an opposition. I mean, leader of the opposition is a official title which is quite normal in practically all parliamentary democracies that follow the Westminster model.
Mm-hmm.
But we've only had an official LO just 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, running from there and then having these heady dreams about PM and things like that, I just don't think it's realistic.
Mm.
And I think it's setting people up for expectation which you can't fulfill.
Mm.
So I think for me and my colleagues, the priority is to institutionalize the idea of an opposition, a good opposition which serves Singapore and Singaporeans in its own way. It's not going to introduce policy because it's not in government.
Mm.
But to be part of that firmament, I think is normal and should be encouraged. And it should be something we're all proud about.
But I mean, at one point, 𝗲𝗂𝗯𝘀𝗰𝗴 himself was de facto leader of the opposition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think back then, in terms of wanting to inspire people, even younger members of your own party, where is Workers' Party in 50 years' time? Isn't it like on you to sort of give them motivation that yes, if you aspire to it, you can one day also be a leader of the country? Yeah?
So if you look at the times when 𝗲𝗂𝗯𝘀 was leader of the opposition, mid-50s, right up to 59, the country being in the throes of decolonization, I mean, the environment was so different, right? And people wanted to remove the cloak of colonialism. And so you had a certain movement among people. Of course, there were other factors which were far more complicated and layered, like, the left, the communists, and their own vision of Singapore. So I think sometimes your environment determines also the outlook. That's all I would say about the first Prime Minister and his de facto role as leader of the opposition. And that also at that point, frankly, it wasn't official. It was still de facto. Today, I think in terms of leading the party forward, Terence, you mentioned next 50 years, quite hard to foresee. I mean, I can't even see the next 5 years, actually 5-10 years sometimes, It's so dynamic, the environment that we're living in. But I think we can all agree that at least from my perspective, we can all agree that it is perfectly legitimate to have a strong opposition in Parliament and to have a functioning government that can execute policy that is not stymied or that is not filibustered in any way to prevent itself from executing the mandate that it has been given at the ballot box. And as a country, as a society, my role is to persuade people that such a state of affairs is actually healthy. When you have the opposition and people, not everybody supports the PAP. I mean, you can tell that from the election results. And for these Singaporeans to know that there is a voice in Parliament, there is somebody who represents them, I think in terms of the unity of a country and of a society, we are better off. And this to me is important. And so when I joined politics at a time when we barely had a toehold into Parliament. By we, I mean the opposition. And so it's about growing that. And I see my role as normalizing the idea of an opposition so that every Singaporean feels that they have a stake in this country. And that's where I am. And so when people ask me when 𝗲𝗲, for example, asked me about Prime Minister and all that, it just didn't sink, it didn't click. And for the reasons I mentioned.
But is there also this feeling that, like how if someone joins a new company and they immediately say they want to be boss, there is that repercussion of like, what does this person think he is? Is that also factoring in? Because I can get how you say that, your goal right now is for representation in Parliament. But I mean, for us, we're always like, okay, one day we want to, make a film that becomes commercially successful. It's not realistic now, but it's like a North Star.
Yeah.
So
I hope you succeed.
I mean, we hope so. You'll be invited to the premiere. But what is the North Star if it's just a short-term goal? Because we've heard that a lot. And I have some questions about that, but just this first part.
No, I think there's nothing wrong in seeking an evolution of the party. Because at the end of the day, the party can only grow if good people join the party. And so you need that growth, and you can't have people who are there in the party for such a long time. Because then those who join will say, look, I'm not going to be selected as a candidate. I don't think I'm going to, be elected as an MP. There are so many hurdles. But that's the reality. Like, we have to grow organically. And I think our focus and our attention is on that.
I see.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is if it's a long-term thing, it's harder to get people kind of...
No, I mean, if it's not exactly that. I mean, if the long term, no one knows, right? I mean, if there's a major malfunction in the PAP, then you better be ready, lah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But I think we are far, far from that. And I think one of the commentaries that came out after the elections actually hit the nail on the head. We're not a two-party system. We're a 1.5-party system. And so until we reach the point where we're a two-party system and somebody else is in this seat, that question probably will have a little bit more. You will probably get an answer which is more depth and which is more forward-looking.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're still at a very fledgling state, if you know what I mean.
Okay. So then going back to the question about, what you say, normalizing one-third representation so that constitutional changes cannot be made.
Yeah.
Then going back to the philosophy behind WP, because I mean, we have read your manifesto. There's a lot of things that, I personally relate with. But you've also said on, for example, the other podcast, that a lot of the work is on the margins because generally Singapore functions.
That's right.
But I mean, personally, I feel like the direction that Singapore is going, sometimes I'm not sure where it's going. So if a car is going in a wrong direction, but you're just working on the margins, that's not good, lah. Right. So how... and one big thing you've also mentioned is that you keep a very keen eye on the pulse of the citizens, right?
Yeah.
But if the pulse of suddenly for some reason Singapore turns ultra-fascist or like something like that,
yes.
If you're looking for the pulse of Singapore, then what is your guiding compass? Apart from representation, what is the philosophy that guides you and your team?
So obviously, the welfare of Singaporeans, right? It's a huge word, welfare. And what does that mean? So for example, if I have a sense that HDB prices are really getting out of whack, I want to make more inquiries into government and how do we reach here? How do we get here? That's not an example of intervening at the margins. So intervening at the margins is for existing policy where there are gaps because society is evolving and there are holes that need to be filled up. Yeah. So that's one example. But there are other issues where you may have a very different view and unfortunately that view can't be crystallized because there's some information that you lack. And HDB policy is one of them. For the longest time, I've always been curious about how land is priced. And we made a manifesto point out of this in the manifesto, and I hope more people try and understand it. I mean, if HDB prices, resale prices have gone up 50%, surely that will have an impact on land costs. And we've asked the question in Parliament before, I've asked the question in Parliament before, how do you understand that differential between, for example, a plot of land A and a plot of land B, which are next to each other? One is for public housing, one's for private housing. And obviously the one for private housing is valued differently because it's, there are certain restrictions on the use of that land for public housing. How do you manage that differential? There must be a formula. And is it consistent? Does it apply across the board? I asked that question actually point blank in Parliament. I want to use the word point blank carefully. I asked that question in Parliament. And the answer was, the reply came something like, you can't ask for technical drawings of MRT tracks or, specific information and all that, which I felt was incomplete. And I think there is a conversation to be had because the prices of flats are a concern. I mean, my father's generation, for example, there was a property escalator. And perhaps it was also a function of the times, the economic times. But today, that escalator, you get a HDB flat, perhaps a condo, which usually is smaller, may well be smaller than your flat. I mean, landed property, I don't know about your generation, but even my generation are saying it's not going to happen.
It's not,
So there's a deep interest in how certain things have evolved. And we are also cautious about putting out a radical proposal without understanding some of those details. And so I think it's always important to have an opposition in Parliament to be able to ask those questions. And if the government doesn't answer them, then the public, either we have to persuade the public that, look, this is important enough for you to take cognizance of it, or we accept that, the government doesn't want to answer the question, so let's just sit down and be happy. I disagree with that, but some people evidently don't have a problem with it. Yeah. So the point you raised earlier about certain issues are only at the margins, some issues.
Yeah.
I think there are other issues where fundamental questions do need to be asked. And this is why I've always believed that having an opposition, and here I'm not saying just the Workers' Party, just having an opposition is healthy for Singapore. People feel that they're participating, people have a stake. And it's not a case of, you say what lah, we just follow. I think that's a very unhealthy society.
So, I mean, during the election, one of the most iconic things you mentioned was talking about toothbrushes and how toothbrushes came to play in politics in Singapore. Yes. And I was actually at a panel recently where 𝗲𝗏 𝗦𝗶𝗶 actually, paraphrasing him, but he kind of said that he believes that retail politics is insurmountable for the opposition. And I thought it's interesting to ask you, because in 2011, I saw your rally speeches. You were talking about, different kinds of assistance and schemes that people are getting. And then 2025, we're talking about toothbrushes and eggs and all. Do you feel like our electorate and the way we talk about politics has gotten, better over time, or has it become even more mired in retail politics?
I think that's a bit of an unfair question, Terence, because I don't think we can summarize how people have evolved with toothbrushes and whatever was said in 2011. But I understand where you're coming from. I mean, I think the nature of politics is there's always going to be some, let's just say creative liberty, especially in the context of a rally and those things. But in the main, I think there are serious conversations to be had when parties take the effort to put out a manifesto. And our manifesto, for example, we cleared at the CEC. It has to be.
Yeah.
And so my own view is politics will evolve with the issues of the day also. And I think toothbrushes, it's something that happened, and so it was brought up, But to Paul's point on retail politics, it's tough because I don't know what he said, but he may well be referring to the reality that there is a statutory board called the People's Association, and I'm not referring to them negatively here. There's good work that's done by the People's Association, reaching out to the community and assisting. Our gripe is the elected member of Parliament has access to a lot more resources through the People's Association as compared to an opposition member of Parliament. And it's almost as if you're excluded from the principles of what the People's Association espouses: strong communities, strong nation, and surely the opposition are part of that. But I think it takes an enlightened enough person to see it that way. And in that regard, I think we've got some way to go. But if you talk about the reality of retail politics, politics is politics at some level. But then after that, you've got to switch mode and move on to other things. And the reality, of course, despite the People's Association, I think the Workers' Party have been able to make progress because we're prepared to walk the ground. You got to knock on doors. You knock on doors, you undertake a house visit today or tomorrow, and you realize, similar feedback. Not really getting into the meat of the issue, but it's one of these things where you reflect over a longer period, 1 year, 2 years, and that through a process of osmosis or whatever you want to call it, you get a sense of what the community is feeling and what its concerns are, and what's important to it. And Singaporeans, I can tell you, generally they want a clean environment. They get quite upset when things are not working, and so some of these things have to be addressed. And it makes a difference when you're in charge of a town council and you can actually follow through on some of these things. And that's what you do.
So you mentioned that, for example, the access to resources and the lack of info. I respect.
Just sorry about that. When I say lack of info, I don't want to create the impression that they are keeping everything close to their chest. Sometimes you have to go out there and look for information, and there is information. But in other areas, of course, you wish there were more. I just thought it's important to caveat that.
Imagine someone about to type, then you're like, okay, lucky you clarify.
Please watch the full thing before
Please watch the full
do
thing.
anything.
But I mean, so basically, okay, some access to info, some info is not the most readily available. You mentioned access to resources. Do you think people in general understand the obstacles that are in the way of an opposition? Because, I mean, just now when I asked you about the North Star, I can totally understand that, okay, if you don't have the info, do you want to paint this radical picture? I mean, just when it comes to people, right? Sometimes people with not enough info, they paint this grand vision, but they don't have backing. And do you think people understand enough of the challenges faced by opposition? Because there's been more clarity now, but sometimes
I would say yes and no. And I say that because, again, because when you have a diverse population, there are some people who are just plugged into current affairs, daily life, and what it means to be a citizen. And there are others who are not. Right, and they're not necessarily because they are these things are not important to them, but there are the daily grind is something which is far more important to them. So it would be a difficult question to really pin down. But I think most people understand that for a political party that has been in charge for decades now, and it's a small place, so you know what makes the place hum. And that knowledge is, I think, it's maybe not a Coca-Cola secret, but obviously there are many of us who also want to understand in more depth what goes on in Singapore and what makes certain things happen and what doesn't make certain things happen, so that we also can put up proposals and policies which are not obscurantis or just harebrained ideas, and I think that's the deep motivation of many of my colleagues in the Workers' Party. I think we want a better Singapore. You want a better society. And also you want to be fair to the people who have introduced certain policies, and you want to understand their reasoning behind that and understand it in depth. But that's always going to be a challenge. I mean, that's why you have parliamentary questions. You have a chance to ask more questions to office holders.
But I mean, just speaking about the obstacles that opposition face, I mean, in terms of recruitment, I mean, the slate of Workers' Party candidates, definitely you see, there are people with very impressive resumes joining your ranks now. How has it changed over the years when you first entered politics versus today? Is recruitment easier because the branding of Workers' Party is stronger? Or is it still the same struggle as it was like 10 years ago?
It would be unfair and inaccurate for me to say it is the same as it was 10 years ago. But it's certainly more difficult because the old issues haven't gone away. We try and look at people in particular within the age band, broadly speaking, of about 30 to 40, 30, 45. It doesn't mean that those outside of those bands can't come in, obviously not, but in the main, I mean, that's where you want your median to be. The concerns of my employer not being happy with my political choices and my ambitions, my family being very concerned about how you will be harangued because you're an opposition member. Those things are still live. Those things haven't changed. But I think what has happened is, and I like to see it this way, what has happened is a lot more younger Singaporeans, a lot more Singaporeans in general are prepared to say, despite that, this is something I want to do. It's going to give my life meaning, purpose, and I want to contribute. And I hope that we continue along that trajectory, that people feel that way. They're not joining because it's an ego trip or because they are a one-issue person. Fortunately, I think our members who were candidates in the last elections, I mean, broad range of ability and skill. And I think they would have all been an asset to Singapore and Singapore society. Yeah, but it's the old issues really haven't gone away. But to be fair, some employers have exhibited an incredible enlightenment. I mean, work is work. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. But we understand that you you want to participate in the political landscape in Singapore. And so let's talk about how we can make that work, rather than say, oh, I'm very scared now the government will not, give us any contracts. So, just speaking without evidence and proof, but that little feeling in your heart, because unfortunately there are human beings amongst us who will judge. Fortunately, I do get a sense that their employers are prepared to look beyond that. At the moment, they tend to be more MNCs.
You mean where the candidates come
where
from?
they're being a bit more open, where they're prepared to be a bit more open. But that again is probably because they have other skin in the game, and it's not just Singapore, but they've got interests elsewhere too. And it may well be possible to put that member in charge of a brief or a department which looks at a market outside Singapore. But I think in the SME space, it's tough. Still tough.
And I mean, we're talking about the branding of WP. Over the past few years, there have been controversies. I know there is an ongoing case with that whole trial that you're appealing. So I'm not going to ask you about the details.
Sure.
But with regards to these controversies, right? How do you see that impacting the brand? Because I won't deny, when certain things came to light, it also made me think, what actually is going on in the WP?
Yeah.
How do you manage that, and how do you see it? Or do you see it as this is part of politics, it's part for the cause? Or you look back, you're like, that impacted us, we just have to work even harder?
Yeah. Well, I mean, life comes with its fair share of ups and downs.
Yeah.
And when things happen, you try and deal with them the best way you can. Sometimes you look back and you say, I could have done some things better. And certainly that thought crosses my mind. But ultimately, the show has to go on. And the public are the best judge, in my opinion, especially if you're in politics. And the response we've had over the last elections, particularly in the incumbent wards, suggests to us that people have faith in the party. People want to continue to see the party grow. And we will do our best to keep the faith. And make sure they don't feel that there's anything to regret.
But I mean, hindsight is 20/20.
Yes.
But when you were going through that, was there a concern that this is going to impact us?
Oh, of course. I mean, I think it would be a very strange individual who felt that this is no problem. But that's politics, right? I mean, when you're a public personality, I mean, anything adverse that happens, you're obviously going to be concerned about its impact. But fortunately, I think the public may take a different view.
So I mean, even during the elections, there was a little bit of a fuss about Andre Lo's leaked communication messages, and I think all the worries you mentioned about him being he's going to be a father soon, and jobs and everything. What do you tell a new candidate who's going through something like that? What was your words of encouragement that you gave to him?
To be fair to Andre, he owned up, and he was prepared to face the camera, really, because this is something I'm sure, like anyone who is faced with that information at a very sensitive time, you will have the wind knocked out of your sails a little bit. I think if you say I'll just deal with it and I'm this super strong person, not probably accurate, but I think Andre dealt with it in a very straightforward way. And look, this is what it is, and he said what he said. And let the public judge me for that, which is probably the only way to deal with it, right? So I didn't have much to say to him, because he's a very capable person, and I think he knew what was at stake, and he knew how to deal with it.
Okay,
and that's a testimony to him.
Did you add anything to the recruitment process of having to scan through people's WhatsApp for like vulgarities or anything?
I don't think that's physically possible. I mean, can you imagine how many WhatsApp chats do you have?
Too many. Yeah.
And if now, let's say Terence is interested in joining the Workers' Party, and I say, Terence, you surrender your phone, look through all your WhatsApp chats. I mean, I think we would probably be recruiting you for some super secret mission to, I don't know, bring peace to the Middle East. So it's not practical. So there's always a point where you have some broad assessment process. You have a broad assessment process. Then you have to make a decision. The decision can be a very easy decision. Don't feel if everywhere, this person has some frailty, some problem, some difficulty, okay. Then my recruitment pool should be in temples and, churches and, mosques. And I just get, a sort of person who has got no dirt on them. And even that is questionable.
I was just going to say. Yeah,
exactly.
Go there,
So really, how far are we going to go? And I mean this with no disrespect. The reality is we all have some flaws. We will all have certain things that we've done in our past or which we look back and we say, maybe I shouldn't have done that or I shouldn't have said that. But I think again, because it's a political arena, everything is fair game.
So, I mean, but talking about recruitment, like, you were talking earlier about the role of the opposition as it is right now. So if a new candidate comes in and he or she is really ambitious and says, I'm here to maybe one day replace you and also want to be the Prime Minister of Singapore, is that a red flag to you?
Be my guest. Start walking the ground and introduce yourself to people. And if the person genuinely is able to work well and thrives in that space, and he or she is able to organize the party well. I'm not suggesting I'm doing all of that, but if that person has got the ability and the capability, I mean, that's not a veto factor. No? That can't be a veto factor.
But I mean, like, thinking about, like, I mean, ultimately what you said there is he or she can say something, but it's the proof is in the pudding.
Absolutely.
What they do.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, how do you think people should look at politicians? Because going back to the question about the controversies, one could argue that they were individual mistakes.
Yeah.
One could argue that maybe the party ecosystem, there was something there. And you can say that about both the incumbent and the opposition.
Yeah.
Sometimes I won't deny that I'm very quick to judge politicians, because to me, I'm like,
well done, you're normal.
Yeah. But I mean, it is something that even on our podcast we have discussed that, okay, politicians at the end of the day are human, but they also willingly took up the role. And for certain politicians, they have a very healthy, compensation, and they don't struggle with some parts of life that other people don't struggle with. But how, I mean, from your own experience, being on the outside, now being in the thick of it, is there anything that you have realized? Or is it that if we settle for people who do stuff in their personal time but are politicians, would that lower standards overall?
So this has to, again, we have to go down to brass tacks, right? Because different people have different views on this. Some people see, for example, being involved outside your marriage as a strict no-no. There are enough people in today's day and time in the context of politics who say this is private matter. As long as you're delivering on the ground, you're a good MP on the ground, I'm judging you for that. I'm not taking a view on either. But this is the reality. So when I say it comes down to brass tacks, it really depends on the issue. And then you will have to understand where society sort of coalesces around, which is the point that people feel more strongly about. But certainly, if you ask me in any job, I mean, sometimes we've come across people in the workplace, right? Super good at something. I mean, they may not be really good at other things, but as an employer, what you sometimes want to do is, you put them in a place where they are going to thrive and they're going to do well for your company. But politics is different because it is multi-sensory. You can get just attacked from all angles in places which you don't expect. Just the nature of the beast. But it is nobody wants these things to happen. They do happen, and you deal with them the best way you can.
I mean that's there were points where I think you lifted the party whip on certain issues, right?
Yes.
And you allowed your party members to speak freely.
Actually, just one issue.
Just one issue. I mean the repeal of 377A.
Yeah.
But how do you balance that with the overall reputation, image of the party, or even people questioning your leadership? Like, why are you allowing your party members to speak? Something completely different from what you personally believe in.
So lifting the whip is rare. It's very rare. In this particular case, I know for a fact that there are enough people in Singapore who take a different view about the repeal of 377A. And I felt at one level that it was important that these Singaporeans don't feel disenfranchised in Parliament. It is not just about the views that we can speak about, but when it comes to the vote, do these people have a place in Parliament? And I felt, at least insofar as the Workers' Party was concerned, that it was okay for my MPs to speak openly and vote freely. That's the Workers' Party. I don't have the government's perspective or the view, because they didn't share that with me in terms of where it's going. What you know is what I know. But I felt that it was important to give those Singaporeans who have a different view that airtime and have their views represented through some Workers' Party MPs who I knew shared those views. Yeah, and I didn't see anything wrong with them.
And I mean, it's decisions like that that really require, some form of leadership. People can disagree or agree.
Yes, of course.
But how has your view on Singapore politics evolved over the years? Is there anything that you have realized, maybe even to people who are curious about politics but not in it, that we don't realize? Because when you entered in 2011, it was a very different time.
Yeah.
I was not the most interested in politics at that point in time, I'll admit. So I can't say for certain the feeling on the ground. But now, even over the past 5 years, since 2020 to 2025, it feels like politics in Singapore is very different. Or is that just like, reading the news, or for you, fundamentally, there are things that will never change, or fundamentally there are things that have changed?
So my first speech as LO actually covered those themes, things that have changed, things that shouldn't change, and things that ought to change. I think that if I can recall, those were the broad areas which I spoke on. That's a useful primer to answer your question.
Yeah.
But I think it's also quite normal that with the passage of time, there will be things that have changed. But ultimately, I think we need to remind ourselves, what are we in politics for? And I believe this very strongly, that number one, political participation is not something we should be shy about. Number two, we should always keep in mind a collective interest in ensuring that Singapore and Singaporeans' welfare are always at the upper end of our considerations as politicians in the country. And finally, politics it cannot be this thing which we are scared of, that we recoil from because, if I say this, somebody is going to say that. This is something people don't normally say, but politics must be about respect, mutual respect. When I meet someone on the ground, do I meet him with, I'm an MP, so I've got some authority or position over you? I've never seen politics like that. I mean, I've always thought we were in this together. And I know it sounds almost, unreal, saying it and verbalizing it, but I've never seen rank or status as something that comes with politics. I think we're all in this together. I have decided I want to participate. I want to try and represent those views. And I do my best with it. And I do my best at it. Fortunately, the journey I've been on has been very fulfilling. And I think it's been fulfilling because I've just come at it like that. I mean, I don't walk around the market with a coterie of people around me, if you've got something to say to me, you can say it to me. It's okay. I don't expect you to be agreeing with everything I say, but I can explain to you why I'm doing things in a certain way and why, in my view, that's the best that I'm doing with regard to how I see the issue, for example. So in that sense, I hope we, at least as a party, we remind ourselves that we are in a very privileged position as members of parliament. And we take that position seriously, and we really try and do our best for our people on the ground, in spite of whatever if you can call it restrictions that or limits that some limits that opposition MPs face, we still have quite a bit of agency. We can still organize our own events. We can still knock on doors. I mean, if you don't give me access to the CC to organize my events, never mind, I organize under the Void Act. You remove offices for MPs, which is what the government did in 1991. Okay, I have my MPs at the Void Act. So you find ways to go around it, and we can. And I think the people see it. I don't think the people are too happy about it. And they're right. But we continue working. Yeah.
What about for contentious issues that arise outside of Singapore? Do you really? I mean, we're all in it together, yes.
Yeah.
In the politics, people say it should stop the water's edge. But I mean, there are even candidates within your own party that speak about contentious issues like what's happening in Gaza.
Yes.
How do you feel about that when talking to your party about expressing their views about such issues?
So I don't think we can be, I mean, look, we are one of the most well-traveled people anywhere in the world. Our education levels, I mean, I don't need to say much more about them. People are interested in international affairs. But there's also a side of us, many of us, which probably I can best describe through what the late Archbishop of in South Africa, Archbishop of Cape Town, Desmond Tutu, said about injustice, and he said, if you see an injustice and you say you are neutral, you've just taken on the side of the oppressor. And he followed that up by saying, if you see an elephant stepping on the tail of a mouse, and you say, sorry, I don't want to get involved, I'm neutral. That was an analogy to describe what he had said earlier about injustice. Now, whether you're a Singaporean, whether you're a person of a nationality of any other country, I think these are emotions which are quite common. When you see something wrong, you have a view. And in some cases, you have a very strong view. And it is no surprise then that people will have strong views about what's happening in Gaza in particular. I mean, when you throw about statistics like the largest number of child amputees on a per capita basis anywhere in the world is found in Gaza. I mean, that's going to move if that doesn't move your heartstrings, I think you probably are some AI model or something like, and for that reason, you can see why we have sent so many tranches of aid to the population in Gaza. By we, I mean the Singapore government. And you've had ordinary Singaporeans donating to various charities, various aid organizations for that very same purpose. Some people will channel their humanity that way. Other people will channel their humanity differently. Say, look, you've got to change your position on this. I think we need to move. Government may have a particular position on Israel, for example, but it should change. And that is to be expected. It's such an emotive issue. And it is, I think, unrealistic to say that you are going to recruit people or candidates who don't have a view on this issue. Or this one, seal it, don't say anything. I think that's a bit difficult. But I think when we talk about it, the lenses that we're seeing it through is not through the lenses of race, not through the lenses of religion, but we're seeing the issue through the lenses of humanity as Singaporeans. And I don't think we are worse off or weakened by that sort of view on a particular issue, on a particular international issue. Again, you may have a view on Gaza, but it's not like you wake up in the morning and that's all you think about. I mean, you would have a view on other issues facing Singaporeans locally. But I think this idea that you can only speak on local issues as a politician in Singapore, or you only have views which are localized, I just think it's not realistic. I mean, we made a point in the manifesto on recognizing the state of Palestine. In the last few months, I think we know what has happened. I mean, a number of countries are going down that road. Just a few days ago, we had a massive showdown between the Australians and the Israelis on the Australian decision to recognize the state of Palestine. The key here, I think, is Singapore may have its own reasons why it takes the positions that it does. I think the latest that has come out from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was by one of our more outstanding ambassadors, who's now a Deputy Secretary, 𝗬𝗄𝗀𝗏 in the UN, where he said, we are prepared in principle to recognize the state of Palestine. There's a nuance there, but he said it. And there are reasons for that. I don't want to go into the reasons because my views may not be accurate, and I don't know what those reasons actually are. But as a layperson, I look at like an air defense system in Singapore. So we've got a platform called 𝗲𝗍. 𝗲𝗍 is mounted on a truck. We've got 2 short-range missiles, 2 medium-range missiles on that platform, completely Israeli platform, and it's obviously networked in an air defense shield. And so, for example, if we've got some advocacy that comes our way which says, no, we should stop any collaboration with Israel, for example, that's going to have an impact on let's say we stop accepting spare parts and stop accepting any sort of military-to-military trade, that's going to have a direct impact on our air defense system. So if you're saying we need to move away, that's going to take time. And so I think to explain this, a government may not be in an easy position to explain this. And so at the same time, when you talk about an issue like that, the complexity is so incredible. You look at actions that have happened in the past, for example, between Hamas and Israel. They've fought conflicts before over the last 15, 20 years. The body count is heavily weighted, of course, on the Palestinian side. You've got independent UN reports. There was a report that came out from a fact-finding mission after one of these conflicts between Hamas and Israel. This was in the late 2000s. And that was the Goldstone report, which one of the points it raised was Israel attacks civilians as a matter of policy. Very controversial. 2 years later or thereabouts, that point was withdrawn. His name was Richard Goldstone, I think, and it was a South African jurist. He withdrew that point. He said, if I had known now what I known then, I wouldn't have said it that way. So these things are all public information. And there are people amongst us, Singaporeans, who are very well versed in these things. And then people also, I've met people who've talked to me about 𝗲𝗲, what happened in 𝗲𝗲, why didn't, the Palestinians take the offer, all sorts of things. It can get very in-depth. But I feel that for a political party in Singapore, it is not wrong to take a position on these matters. People focused on Palestine, but our manifesto also said certain things about Myanmar. We also said certain things about the South China Sea. So we're not going to hesitate from sharing our views on these things, given the knowledge that we have. I think it would. I'm not going to fetter the right of the party to have, an opinion on these things. But if people think that the WP is using this to appeal to certain communities, I think that's a very mistaken view. We also had a point in our manifesto. Should Thaipusam be recognized? We want to recognize Thaipusam as a public holiday. I'm surprised. I was expecting somebody to say, that's also playing identity politics.
I think people did say online.
I'm not surprised. And probably the same group who are saying the same thing about Palestine and opposition in Palestine. But you're going to deal with detractors and those who don't agree with you. But I think as a party, we need to be clear where we're coming from. As long as we're clear, we defend the point in public. I'm prepared to defend the point. Let's go.
But is that one of the fundamental changes in politics where there's almost this performative element? Because Parliament was always not always live streamed. We have gone to watch Parliament. Again, recommend everybody to go and watch to understand the dynamics. But do you feel that it's something that you have to really think about now, what your policy is versus how it's perceived?
The fact that we are having a podcast and talking about politics, right, including the what happened in the start of the last session, last Parliament, which was live broadcasting.
Yeah.
Certainly, this was actually one of the fears of the PAP, which I think was verbalized in Parliament when we had raised the prospect of live parliamentary sessions. And I think one of the objections was there could be that playing to the gallery element. I think that's a function of politics everywhere in the world. But because we're moving, the system is evolving, there is always going to be some of that. But if you think that is going to win you a vote, I would be very careful. Because,
you mean like looking into the camera doesn't like tug at the heartstrings?
No, I'm sure there's a bit of that. But you see, you've got a whole team with you. Yeah. But the more important point I want to make is Singaporeans can see through this. If they see that somebody is grandstanding, they know that person is grandstanding. And my view is they may not react to it very positively insofar as a vote is concerned. I mean, you may get an applause and stuff like that. But is that going to move the needle? That's a big question mark. Because our population is quite sophisticated. And it's a point I made in my address to voters in the last elections. Our voters are sophisticated. And I think if we think that they can't see through what is not said, I think we're deluding ourselves.
So, I mean, speaking of Parliament, because I think the Workers' Party has 2 NCMPs going in.
That's right.
Have your views about the NCMP scheme evolved since it was first introduced? Where I think there was a fear that it was meant to weaken the opposition. Do you see it now having a complementary role to what the elected MPs do?
Now, my view will be consistent with the view that we've shared about the NCMP and NMP schemes. And our position as a party is that we should move away. We should move away from them. I mean, for that, I don't want to go into an extensive discourse of my views because the party has a position. And short of changing the position in the course of this podcast, I think that position holds.
But the selection of Eileen and Andre, was there specific reasons why these two?
In Andre's case, it was there was no the question of choice. It doesn't even arise because he is by percentage. He's the one, and there's no alternative. I think there has been a conversation I've heard. Some people say, "Why don't you choose somebody else? You got 2 choices." So I don't have 2 choices. I have one choice. And it's not a choice. It's Andre, and unless he doesn't want to take it up, that's a different thing. But there's Andre, and then I've got to choose, or the party has got to choose from someone from the Tampines team. And right now we have 2 women in Parliament, 𝗲𝗲, the elected MP in Sengkang, and Sylvia Lim, the chair of the party who's in Aljunied. And we felt that we wanted to increase the number of women, the MPs in so far as the Workers' Party comes from. Our position on is that we don't have enough women. And we want more women in our party. We want more women to take up leadership positions in the party and to become MPs. So that was one important consideration insofar as Eileen is concerned, apart from the fact that, of course, she will be an excellent member of Parliament in our view. And she speaks well, she connects well. And I would say the same for practically everybody on the Tampines team. But our considerations, I think the fact that we also want to appeal to a broader base of women was a factor.
I mean, I see them, they've started their own Workers' Party podcast.
Yes, they have.
And they say they're going to be documenting their journeys as NCMPs.
Yes.
Was this something that was brought to you, or you suggested it, given what you think about podcasts now?
I won't comment on that directly, but what I would say is I am heartened when our people want to try these things. There's of course a part of me which we talk about tripwires. There's a part of me as the leader of the party who also wants to protect them, and I don't want anything to go awry. So I may end up looking like a bit of a paternalistic figure and say, "You better be careful, do all that." But at some time also you got to let people go. You got to let them try things, and you got to trust them.
Did it also put pressure on you to finally come on this podcast?
Well, that was self-imposed because I had already told you I was going to come on the podcast. So the question, of course, was just timing that we had to work out.
So I mean, just in this last example, you said sometimes you need to let people go. And, you said that Eileen coming to the parliament is good because you want to increase female representation. You lifted the whip because you wanted like diversity of thought. I know this is going to be a label that is very conclusive, but it sounds like you're quite liberal, you're quite woke as a party.
Woke? Oh God.
So that is just my way of setting the context for
you just set the dogs on us.
No, the way, maybe I'll give the context why I say that.
Yeah.
When you look at first world democracies around the world, a lot of them are starting to go right. Starting to lean right. And part of me is like, oh shit, is that really the true human nature of electorates around the world? And are we just living this dream of it should be diverse, it should be equitable. Maybe human nature is pointing towards that way. And I would like to push against that because I do believe in certain things. But is that a concern for you all? Looking at how political landscapes and electorates are going in other countries? Or you think it's difficult to compare across countries?
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I think we're interested in Singapore. No matter how other countries are going, that's their journey. But the broader point you make about how things come in cycles sometimes, you swing too far to the left, there will be a force in society which wants you to either come back to the center or move more to the right. And that usually happens when they see that moving in a certain way has led to certain negative outcomes. So for example, if you give the right a lot of space to determine things, people start getting uncomfortable. And you look at what happened in the 80s in the UK. Conservatives would be very happy with the outcomes in the United Kingdom in that decade with Thatcher in charge. But there were people with many different views. And sometimes you have a certain personality that moves society in a certain way. But I've always seen politics and generally public life for the individual citizen as sometimes coming in cycles. And the role of a politician in that situation is you may have your ideology as a party, but if the ideology doesn't sync with the public mood, even though you're really passionate about your views and your thoughts about issues, you're probably not going to make headway. So you have to evolve. But other people will say, no, we are not pragmatic like that. We are ideologically inspired. We think we have the answer and society is not ready for us at this time. But that doesn't mean I'm going to shift. I'm going to stay my course. And that's perfectly understandable in a political environment. But again, I feel that if we go down the ideological route in an environment where there is a certain pragmatism about Singapore society, that may delay the more balanced political system that my colleagues and I are looking for.
So, you talk about the slightly paternalistic fears that you have when it comes to the younger members of your party. Does it also reflect in your journey as a parent as well? Because I think...
Oh, of course.
I saw your Father's Day message. You said you need to be fully present in the lives of your children.
Yeah.
What does that mean for you?
Well, it's actually a subtle reminder to myself because sometimes you realize that the people around you are doing that far more than you are. My wife, she is ever present and she aims always to be ever present. And sometimes you say, okay, I better try and reach that standard. Otherwise, I'm a hanger-on. I'm not doing my part. But then you realize, when you hang with I've got 2 daughters. They're wonderful to hang around with. Yesterday at the dinner table, I was having my wife was out for work. I was having a bit of a session with them, speaking and chatting, and they were just laughing and giggling and talking. And I've got a rule at the dinner table: we respect the food. Let's eat first, then we can have all the fun we want in the world. So they weren't on point at the dinner table yesterday, and so I was trying to be serious, and I couldn't communicate that seriousness to them without raising my voice a little. And then, one of my daughters, the younger one, she takes a small little whiteboard and then she writes, Daddy, we are sorry we didn't listen to you. And then she writes, right back. And then I was going out last night for another engagement when my wife came back. And then so I just wrote on that little white, love you monkeys. And they caught a sight of it before I left. And the younger one said, how can you call us monkeys?
You're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
But that's the truth of being in a loving family and, trying your best all the time, right? I mean, you're going to fall short sometimes, and there's a lot of self-criticism, like, could I have done this better? Could I have done that better? And they are now at 10 and 7. There's the real monkey is coming up quite soon, the PSLE. So how are we going to negotiate that? I always thought actually I would be this, quite relaxed, chill parent. Like, okay, take it as it comes. But I look at some of the questions and I see sometimes the struggle and I get a bit worried and I get concerned. And I suppose we have to just negotiate this as best we can. Yeah. And at the same time, try and remind ourselves that life is long and reflect back on our own experience. I mean, I wasn't the best kid in school. I mean, I probably was just meeting the mark all the way until I entered university. And that's when things picked up for me because I think I started learning a subject or immersing myself in a subject which I really enjoyed. But up to that point, it was a bit of a struggle for me.
And that wasn't law, that was history.
That was history. First degree was history. Yeah. And then you remind yourself, look, if you had to negotiate your journey, maybe we should give some space for the kids to negotiate their journey as well. Of course, easy to say lah.
I mean, your daughters now have this on record lah.
No, they said, Daddy, didn't you meet these two gentlemen, Harish and Terence? You said this, or why now you're so different? I just shot myself in the foot there, but then here we go.
But I mean, in that sense, because before this podcast, we were just talking about how Harish and I both sort of fell off that Singapore dream track. You study, you get A's and get scholarship on that. Like if your daughters come to you and say, I'm very inspired by what you do in politics and I'm considering that route as well. Is there something okay for you?
Oh, this is a very intense question. Because of the journey I have taken, maybe I'll answer that question when they actually are of age and they want to ask, they are seriously thinking about that because if your motivation is a positive motivation, I mean, of course, I would encourage it. But being a father is always a father, mother is always a mother. You always want to protect your children. And when it comes to your own children, you're a little bit more, your antenna is probably deployed a bit higher. You also want to tell them the downside, that comes with it. But again, I don't know what the terrain will be like if they ever reach that point in their lives. But you don't have to do such big things in life sometimes. Sometimes just be a kind person, be a decent person. And you never know what other vistas will open to you. There are many ways of serving the community.
Is it informed by your own interactions with your dad? Because your dad was a judge.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have spoken a bit about how when you entered elections, I mean, he also had his reservations like all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I think those it would be very odd if somebody who is close to you didn't have reservations, right? It would be very odd. But I think ultimately at the end he said, look, it's your life. You've got to make your decisions. And that was the end of it, And I think our politics isn't too different, in terms of how we see the world and what we want of the world and of Singapore and what we want to see in our society. So it was... I'm pretty sure he had his worries and concerns. But at the end of the day, I think, like I said, you've got to let people do what they want to do. And sometimes you just have to learn it the way it's going to be taught to you.
So I mean, like, I did want to ask you, like, okay, how are you looking towards the future? But I wanted to also set the context that while researching for this, I came across your blog called Singapore 2025.
It's almost a defunct blog now.
Yeah, which I never knew existed.
Right.
But I mean, I think the earliest posting was 2006.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the most recent was October 2019.
Right.
Wow.
So, I mean, what was the context of that? And the fact that it was called Singapore 2025.
Yeah.
How did the whatever vision you had back there match up with Singapore right now?
So in 2026...
2006.
Sorry, too far forward. In 2006, and probably a bit before that, I mean, I did want to get involved in... I was quite clear in my mind then that I wanted to get involved in public life in a different capacity. It could be a member of a political party or what. And I felt that if I wanted to do something, I had to do something by then. And there was also this residual hope in me that by then it would be quite different from what it was in 2006. And actually the blog isn't something, they're not my deepest, darkest thoughts. It's more of some of the writings that I did and some of my thoughts which I just shared either online with alternative news sites or views which I had on matters of current affairs.
And certain clarifications also, right?
And certain clarification must be. And then thereafter, if it ended in 2019, the reason probably was because there's now a leader of the opposition website. It's literally called leaderoftheopposition.sg. Bit of a mouthful, but it has now sort of supplanted that role, and it's a repository of some of the speeches I've made in Parliament and some of the other things that I have done in my capacity as a member of Parliament.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
sorry. I mean, but how does that vision, if you can remember what you thought of Singapore would be like in 2025?
Yeah. Well, it was more personal, right, that I wanted to be involved in politics in some way, shape, or form. So actually, I kind of hit the target a little bit earlier.
Very early.
That's like your goal 2010, like Singapore qualifying for World Cup. This
This one is a very tragic, it'll be a very difficult conversation. So let's just leave goal 2010 where it was. In 2010.
Yeah, I mean, okay, speaking of repository, I did see your interview on radio, right?
Yeah.
And there was this point where I felt like you were about to say something really profound about your history of pet rabbits. But somehow it got interrupted by a traffic update, right?
It must have been a big accident.
I was like, okay, I mean, because I'm a pet owner myself, I feel a lot for my pets and all.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to hear you finish your thoughts about that.
Well, I love animals.
Yeah.
All right? I really, really love animals. And I think they give you, and I'm a dog lover. I'm a massive, massive dog lover. But keeping a dog is a serious responsibility, and given my schedule, I mean, unless there's somebody in the house who's prepared to take the responsibility, I don't think it's fair to have a dog. But if my friends have dogs, best thing in the world, so you just go hang with them and stuff. So because a dog is I mean, the communication is super strong, and it can almost read your mind sometimes, and it knows your moods and it can, react to the environment that you're in. I don't feel that this is the right time for me to get a dog. So my wife, when I married her, she had a rabbit, right? And the rabbit lived till it was 8 or 9. And a rabbit is a bit like a cat, I mean, it's sometimes, you feed me.
Moody.
It can be moody, and then leave me alone, But this particular rabbit, it had a routine. So in the morning, and then we let it hop around in the house. It was trained. It knew when to go back to its cage and do what it had to do. Of course, it would nibble at certain things. And I grew very close to it. And in the morning, it'll run this figure of 8s around my leg. So I got to be careful and trip and fall, because the rabbit is doing this. And then the rabbit, basically, one fine day, I was doing my Meet the People session. And my wife calls me and she tells me that, Ranja, that was the name of the rabbit, passed on. And at least it passed on, and my wife got to see its last breath. And we had a very close relationship with that rabbit. And so at that point, I thought, okay, I can't keep another animal. This is just too painful, And but lo and behold, about maybe about 2 years later, we had another rabbit who, like most rabbits, they don't live that long, but this rabbit passed on, and sayang lah, But I didn't want to say anything profound, apart from the fact that I love animals, and it's very difficult sometimes as a member of parliament when you have to look at statistics which says, we've killed so many pigeons. We've killed so many pigeons in the constituency because there is a serious overfeeding problem, and you got to manage the population. And it's not something we're proud about, but when there's an overpopulation and people are not being mindful about what their actions are leading to, there are a lot of good-hearted people. They want to feed the birds, God's creatures. Let's not. I'm just feeding some, crumbs and stuff like that. But then you get an overpopulation problem. You've got toxic, pigeon poop can be quite toxic. And they're nesting somewhere and causing a disamenity elsewhere. So then you've got to manage the situation. And so culling is one of those options.
But it's sad.
It's sad. Of course it's sad. And then there's also preventive measures, speaking to people. And then there's the question of at what point are you throwing good money after bad money? You're going to net up your whole hawker center. And it's so easy for the net to get perforated. And then you're going to put it up again. At some point, you've got to make some decisions which not very proud about, but it is what it is.
So, on that note, looking forward, right? What is the thing that concerns you most about Singapore? And what is the thing that excites you the most? Because I would say, as a Singapore citizen, I love Singapore. Of course, we're very critical of Singapore, but sometimes I ask myself, where is Singapore going? And got certain things I'm concerned about.
I think when you say you're critical about Singapore, I would say you're not alone. But I would also say that people who are critical because they care. They care about where Singapore is going. They want it to go in a different way, which is a place which will make more people proud and happy about where Singapore is. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with criticism, because it comes from a good place. It comes with a good outcome in mind. My vision for Singapore, as a Singaporean, I don't speak as an MP now, but certainly if you look at the environment today, we've got, government just announced this economic strategies review early August, and then there are a few prongs to it, ranging from entrepreneurship to innovation and a number of other things, manpower. You know that our society is there's always some flux, large numbers of foreigners playing their part in pushing the economy forward. And you've always got a concern whether Singaporeans are going to be part of that journey, or are they going to be, playing second fiddle? And you always want your own people. I never understood why some people are so shy to say Singaporeans first. Why shouldn't it be Singaporeans first? You are the citizens of this country. But I think the impression created sometimes is when you say Singaporeans first, what you really want to say is affirmative action. Even though you don't have the skills, I must promote you. That's not what people are saying. But I think people are saying, look, if I've got the rights, if I've got the skill set, if I've got the ability, judge me fairly. And judge me in the context of a Singaporean company with a Singaporean employee. I've got Singaporean issues, I got Singaporean bills to pay. And I think it is important for employers also to keep that in mind. I understand employers are dealing with multiple generations of employees, millennials, Generation X. That's what we call ourselves, right?
Millennials.
Gen X, then millennials.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's and your HR policies also sometimes, you've got to adjust how do you, accommodate everybody. It's not hard, not easy being an employer. I understand that. I appreciate that. But I've always felt that if we want to, we're talking about SG60 this year, people are talking about SG100. If we don't have a care about the Singapore core, if we don't have a care about our people who are here, living here, who become citizens here, I fear the day when we have a real crisis on our hands where everybody has to, batten down and, prepare ourselves. And I don't just mean a crisis like COVID or something, but I mean a crisis where we've got to make choices. How united are we? And so I think we really have to work at building a more cohesive society. And I don't think it's a contradiction to have a cohesive society, even if you have a robust political system. Yeah.
But are you worried that people take the word Singaporeans first and use it as an excuse to, exclude, immigrants who contribute to our economy and one day can become citizens as well?
Which is why I caveated or I phrased my point the way I did. Foreigners make an important contribution. And I think if we say that, we should exclude them or we should see them differently, I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to. But I think we have to be aware of who we are and who we want to be. And I think we have to remind ourselves that at the end of the day, COVID, what happens when COVID strikes? Who is released from the jobs first? The foreigners leave first. They go back to their home countries. And then it's the Singaporeans here who have to get around and work together. There were many foreigners who stayed in Singapore as well. Foreign workers. Those guys, they are an integral part of the Singapore story. And let's be clear about that. But I think as a people, we have to understand that no one owes us a living. We have to make the best of this place. And that means getting involved, organizing, participating. And our job is to make sure that, their interests and their welfare are at the top of our priorities.
So, you have laid out the vision. What would make you stop being in politics?
Tired lah. Pening lah.
Or is it like 1/3 in Parliament, like that's your goal? Or how are you thinking about it?
I don't think I can look too far into this because we have party elections every 2 years. We have general elections every 5 years. So I don't think it's so much something which is in my hands like that. But as long as I feel I'm useful, as long as my colleagues feel I'm useful, then those will be some considerations I will keep in mind.
And you didn't answer the thing about what excites you most about Singapore. To close it off.
Family and friends. You and of course the fact that it's that feeling, right? When that airline, whichever airline you take, lands in Singapore. That feeling. I think it's a feeling. Something happy to be back, happy to be back, and this is hope. This is home for me. I may have disagreements with certain policies, with the way certain things are done, but it doesn't extend to me becoming a bitter person. You know what I mean? And I'm excited by everything that excites most people in Singapore. When suddenly Singapore is in the final of some competition, or some Singapore club is doing well internationally, or some Singapore athlete is doing well, you shock lah. And you want that person to do well. You want them to succeed. So I think in that sense, most of us are quite similar lah. But I know I have friends in the opposition who sometimes really, really get upset, and I just say, look, don't let your unhappiness with certain policies turn to bitterness. Let's get our heads down. Let's try and work the issue. And sometimes you feel very righteous about your position, but you can easily swing into self-righteousness, and you've got to guard against that. So I'm sorry, we were supposed to talk about what excites me, right?
You said family and friends.
Family and friends. Seeing the country doing well, seeing the country being represented well, and also seeing the country have being respected. And to that end, I think the politicians, including those in the PAP, of course, in fact, largely because of some of them, the country has found a place internationally, and you have to respect that.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing, Pritam. Thanks for coming on. It's been long awaited. I really appreciate it. Now we just have that one segment we end all our podcasts with, which is the One Shiok Things segment.
Right.
We'll give you a few more minutes to think of something if you don't. Because Terence and I will go first.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Terence, what is your One Shiok Thing?
My One Shiok Thing actually is this TV show called 𝗲𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗏 I think it's on HBO Max now or something. But if you don't know about it, it's based on a book where there's an imagined future where America is taken over by a religious extremist group, and then it's renamed Gilead. And basically they impose very harsh laws, especially on the women, where the role of the woman is pretty much reduced to being a reproductive system, and it's also meant to they do a lot of things that are really, really nasty, like forcing women to give birth to the leaders' babies and things like that. So now it's in season 6.
Oh, so there's a new season?
Yeah, there's a new season out that they filmed.
6 seasons, really?
6 seasons of this, yeah. So it's a struggle between, women trying to escape that future America called Gilead, and how they're fighting against the oppressors. But I guess what's interesting is that, you look at what's going on in the West today, right? Or at least in America. And like when I started watching in season 1, this felt like completely like science fiction. It was like not possible at all. But now in 2025, when I watch the show, I'm like, I'm starting to see like they're rewriting stuff that's in the museums in the US and things like that. I'm realizing, fiction and reality are starting to converge a little bit. It's kind of scary.
So you have watched all 5 seasons before?
Yeah. So I just started on season 6, and I just felt like I had such a different feeling like watching it this time, where I was like, wow, this is actually really disturbing. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
But it's good.
It's good. Yeah, it's good.
Okay. My One Shiok Thing is in some way related to 𝗲𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗏 Tale, because Sydney Sweeney acted in 𝗲𝗵𝗶𝗏𝗏 Tale.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
right?
Yes, she did.
And I mean, I don't know whether you're aware of that whole Sydney Sweeney has good genes controversy in the US with the denim thing and all. I'll give you a TLDR. She appeared in an American Apparel, American Eagle ad, where they were playing on the word Sydney Sweeney has good genes. GENES versus JEANS.
Right.
So there was one ad where she cancelled out the word genes, GENES, and replaced it with genes. So people were calling it white supremacy and
like some eugenically inspired language.
Yeah. I mean, we spoke about it on our podcast also, and I think both our sentiments were like, okay, it's an ad campaign, and they probably knew the reaction they were going to get. But my One Shiok Thing is, the Gap, right? The Gap, like this brand in the US, which I can't say is very cool. They released a video of like 2 weeks ago called Better in Denim. And it's basically like whatever you think of the Sydney Sweeney thing and all, I just thought it was nice to see a brand kind of do their own interpretation. So they got a number of women across races, colors, skin tones and all dancing in denim. Almost like with reference to Sydney Sweeney. Yeah, so they call it Better in Denim. It's dance to 𝗪𝗪𝗔's Milkshake, the song.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was interesting. Like I've never heard the Gap do anything exciting in recent times. But to do that, I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Of course, you can look at it cynically, like, wow, even the brands are so polarized and all. But
it's quite a wholesome response to what Sydney Sweeney, or at least the conversation around genes.
Yeah, correct. And I mean, you watch it, it's really a diverse cast. And it does feel, now you look at Sydney Sweeney's ad, you're like, okay, some benefit to diversity and kind of thing. So it was just interesting. It's interesting to see side by side.
Let's have a look at Gap jean sales over the next few quarters.
Exactly. So that's where the polarization, you never know, because American Apparel probably lost a bunch of customers but gained a bunch of customers. Gap is going to same thing. And what about you, Pritam?
So my One Shiok Thing is less exciting. So I had a conversation with a good friend. He actually stood in the GE. And he reminded me of an essay I read many years ago, but obviously it was in one part of my mind which I never, reached out to. And this essay is called The Inner Ring. And The Inner Ring was a memorial lecture given by C.S. Lewis in the 1940s, during the war. And the Inner Ring is, and he's speaking to this crowd of younger people, and he's basically saying, look, in your life, you're going to try and always be part of a select group. It's almost like climbing the greasy pole, and you will be in a position where you may compromise your principles just to get into the inner ring. And then when you're in the inner ring, there's going to be another inner ring in the inner ring. And so you keep, adjusting yourself, even though you may not agree with it, even though the principles may be questionable, but because it's so attractive to be in the inner ring, and you're so fearful of being out of the inner ring, that you just go along with things. And he says that, the real thing you should do is actually aim for excellence, strive to be, an individual who is judged on the quality of his output and the work that he or she does. And we had a conversation about that, because we have met many people in life brilliant people, between the both of us, who extremely able, capable, but I think their motivations are to be in an inner ring, And no surprises, this conversation was in the context of improving the party, getting more people in the party, and the sort of people that we are looking at. And it was very reflective for me. So I went back to read the essay, not particularly long, the memorial lecture. And it reminded me how in life, we all take certain journeys. And because ambition is not an unusual characteristic of our lives. Everybody wants to do better and to be in a better place. But as we keep going there, we may lose sight of things that matter. The things that will actually define us. And I strongly recommend that essay to people. And I think that reminder of that essay is going to prompt me to recommend it to more people that I speak to. Especially younger people.
Do you know the context of why he was speaking about this?
Well, it was
he going through in his life? Or?
I don't know that. I don't know the details. He was a lecturer, some professor in university actually. Yeah. So I don't know whether there was something that was happening in his life at that time. But it's something I have to check out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
So got TV, got long form TV, short form TV, and like
essay,
introspective read. Introspective read. But thanks so much, Pritam.
Not at all.
I don't think we need to say where people can find you. Online, you're everywhere.
Yeah.
All the best for Parliament, and hope to see you back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, back on the podcast.
Sure. I enjoyed myself here. Actually, I knew I would enjoy myself here. I knew I'd enjoy this conversation. So just don't take my reason to go to KL too personally.
The wound is there. It's meant, but the wound
But I
is
think
there.
I've just stitched it up.
But the wound is there. It's a reminder.
I will buy some cream to make sure there's no scar. But thank you for having me. On a more serious note, I've watched your podcasts. Not all of them, but many of them. And it's you may not see it that way, but it's an important contribution to the public space, and it may not be easily quantifiable if you're talking about dollars and cents, but you should be proud of yourselves. And thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you for what you do also.
Not at all. Thank you so much.
Awesome. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you all very soon.